Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers Inspiration. I'm your host, Harriette Cole. Thank you all so very much for joining me today. I hope you're doing pretty well. I say that, and today's topic is learning to deal with stress. And so, when I say pretty well, I'm not saying perfect. I'm not saying that everything is excellent, but let's do a check in. Check in with yourself. How would you say you're doing right now? How do you feel? On a scale of 1 to 10, if with 1 being really not so good and 10 being excellent, where would you place yourself right now, your state of being? Okay, so you can write that down. I want you to catalog it for yourself. Where on your state of being would you say you are? 1, pretty low, 10, exuberant, great, feeling fantastic. Where do you fall? Tell yourself the truth. You're telling it to yourself. All right, then I want you to do another uh, evaluation. I want you to think about the level of stress that you are experiencing right now. Whatever those things are that you would say account for stress in your life, as you think about that, you think about what's going on in your life, in your world, using that same numerical value from 1 to 10, 1 being very low stress. So this time the 1 could be a good thing. The other one wasn't so good, but 1 very low stress, 10 very high stress, that where you feel possibly overwhelmed by whatever's going on in your world. Where would you say you fit? Now, I asked you 2 very different things. So this one is your stress level. Where would you say you are? 1, you're pretty chill. You're whatever's going on, you don't feel burdened by stress. You feel mainly at ease. You're good. You're relaxed. 10, your head could blow off. Your emotional, whatever those emotions might be, you feel maybe your heart is racing. You're participating in bad habits that only make it more difficult for you to get from wherever you are to wherever you feel you need to be. That that 10 is when you're on overload. So I want you, okay, so Debbie says she's at 8. Now, is that 8 stress, Debbie? Just give me a yes if it's the stress 8. Um, a lot of people are feeling a lot of stress. And often those numbers don't don't meet the first one about your state of being, how are you feeling, and your level of stress. And the reason that they often don't meet or match is because we mask how we're feeling. We mask what we're dealing with. We often put a smile on our faces even when we're not smiling on the inside. We often believe that we're supposed to carry around buckets of stress. I don't know about you, but I I love to get massage, in part because my shoulders are often super tight. Does that happen to you? Often, I'm just like, ooh, I carry stress in my shoulders. And people carry stress in different parts of their bodies. We carry it, but we don't always do something to balance ourselves out, right? So, yeah, Debbie says she helps everybody but herself. This is so common. This is very, very common for women, but it's just common for people. Like, if you think you're a good person, you are probably someone who's going above and beyond to help someone else. And you feel like that's what you're supposed to do. That's what your life is. That's how you were taught to live. And when we do that out of balance, we can get worn out. We can start uh, functioning at a much lower level than we're suited for functioning. So, for example, you can start missing deadlines and really doing a poor job at work simply because you're stretching yourself too thin trying to help other people. Has that ever happened to you? That is such a it's such a common thing, and folks wonder, well, how did I get here? I'm so good at my job. I'm so good at whatever these responsibilities are that I have accepted, but right now I'm not good at them anymore. How did that happen? And then you start beating yourself up more. But if you step back and kind of unravel it and try to figure out what exactly is going on here, what you may discover is that you've given yourself more than you can possibly do. You keep adding to the list of things that are your duties, your responsibilities. And then when you cannot fulfill them all, then things start falling away. And you end up not being able to be the person who's good for your word, or the person who shows up with a pleasant attitude, because maybe you have used up all of the pleasantries, and what you have left is a fatigued being, you. So I'm not saying all this stuff to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I think we need to look at, where are we? How are we doing? Check in with yourself. Are you right now in a place where you want to be, stress wise? Because today we're talking about stress. And tomorrow, for anybody who's watching this live, tomorrow we're having an evening Dreamleapers session. We call it Dreamleapers Now Live. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're doing a special session with Dr. Janet Taylor, who's a psychiatrist. And we're going to be diving deeply into what it means to step into change. And a lot of this conversation will surround how we show up for ourselves, how we take responsibility for our thoughts, words, and deeds. And so I thought we could get that started today in thinking about how we deal with stress. A lot of people mask stress by working overtime. Well, if I keep working more, then the stress will go away because I'll get all the tasks done. So I just need to work, a gazillion more hours. Do you do that? I do that. Sometimes people eat too much, don't eat enough, drink too much, indulge in other substances or behaviors that are escapist in nature. And the thing is, what I've discovered from speaking with many mental health professionals, and also with many clients, people that I work with to help them to lead empowered lives, what I've noticed time and again is, if you can pause for a moment, take stock of what it is that you're doing, how you're dealing with stress, and then make a decision that perhaps you're going to change something. Oh, maybe this behavior isn't serving me anymore. I've talked to people who have gotten to the point where a drastic change has to occur. So it could be they were so stressed in their job for so many years, they had to quit. They were so stressed on their job for so many years, they got fired. They have been in a relationship that's toxic for too long, and it needed to end. They've lived in a place that is not healthy for their spirit, and they needed to move. Lots of things occur when people get to a breaking point. And I want to say, you don't necessarily need to wait until you get to the breaking point to make a change. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, I've reached the edge of the cliff and I've got to do something. It doesn't have to be that. It could be, You're paying attention to your life. You're paying attention to what makes you happy, what doesn't, what soothes your soul, and what stirs you the wrong way. And if you pay attention, pay close attention, then you will notice, that particular thing isn't serving me. So I shouldn't do that anymore because it's not helpful. And if you take stock of how you think, what you say and what you do, and you notice when it's working for you and when it's not, then you can make a conscious choice about whether a behavior, an activity, a person, a thing, an experience deserves to be in your life or not. And then if it's not, then it may not be a 1, 2, 3 that you can discard the person or the experience. It may be that it takes disentangling. It may be that it takes changing your attitude about that person, place, thing, or experience if it has to remain in your life, but your relationship to it can change. I hope that what I'm saying is making sense to you and something is resounding in you. Because all of us have things that cause us stress. Stress doesn't, the doctors say, and Dr. Janice is going to talk to us about this tomorrow, the stress doesn't just go away. You can relieve lots of stress. You can eliminate some stress, but it's not possible to eliminate all stress. I think that it's how we deal with stress that is the issue. And that's why I wanted us to think about it. How do we deal with stress? What do you do when you are feeling stressed? And based upon where you are in this moment, and um, folks shared that the stress level is pretty high for a lot of people. What do you do? Another thing that people do that is not always helpful is to pick up the telephone and call somebody else and start complaining and pointing the finger and saying, he did that, she did that, this happened for this reason. Deflecting, not taking responsibility for whatever it is. And it may be that someone did something that was wrong, that was hurtful, that was uncalled for, that was mean, that was spiteful, that was irritating, that was unconscious, that was racist, that was sexist, whatever. It's not that these things don't happen. How do we deal with them? How do we respond to the things that are happening in our lives? And how can we be assertive about how we live our lives so that we create space for peace? So we create space for joy. Because you can have joy even in tense, stressful moments, but you have to create space for it. If that makes any sense. I found some quotes, some good quotes I want to share with you. This one I thought was interesting because it's about, how to deal with stress. It says, we can easily manage if we will take, let me start over. We can easily manage if we will only take each day the burden appointed to it. But the load will be too heavy for us if we carry yesterday's burden over again today, and then add the burden of the morrow before we are required to bear it. That's from John Newton. Let me read it again. It's got a lot in it. We can easily manage if we will only take each day the burden appointed to it. It says easily manage if we only take each day the burden appointed to it. But the load will be too heavy for us if we carry yesterday's burden over again today, and then add the burden of the morrow before we are required to bear it. Another way of saying that is, if we live in the present and deal with what is before us in the moment, if we do that, not taking on whatever we think is going to happen tomorrow or what happened yesterday, but that sense of be here now, be in the moment, what happens? We can easily manage if we will only take each day the burden appointed to it. But the load will be too heavy for us if we carry yesterday's burden over again today and then add the burden of the morrow before we are required to bear it. Does that make sense to you? And then when you really unpack it, think about how often you do exactly what it's saying we shouldn't do. This is basically, I remember when I was growing up, something that people would often say, people in the church would often say, God will never give you more than you can handle. And, you would typically hear this when something devastating was happening or irritating. It was an extreme situation that would feel overwhelming. And then someone would say, oh, you're going to be fine. God will never give you more than you can handle. And you're thinking, really? This feels like more than I can handle. And then because you heard that again and again, somehow it could create peace and calm for you. Okay, maybe it's true. Maybe God has given me the capability to weather whatever this storm is right now. Even though it's a lot, I can handle it because God has given me what I need, and I have the wherewithal within me to be able to manage whatever's before me. That's essentially the first part of that quote, what Newton is saying, that the burdens, the stress, the challenges that come to us on a daily basis in that day, he's suggesting we can easily manage those, whatever they are. We can easily manage if we will only take each day the burden appointed to it. And sometimes the burden feels unbearable. Sometimes you just can't imagine that you can go on one more day because the burden is so much. And yet, somehow, we are able to do so. But if we hold on our shoulders the burden of yesterday, whatever we're dealing with today, and the anticipation of tomorrow, it's impossible to stand up. It's impossible to have the strength to take one step and put it in front of the other. And so John Newton says, don't do that. Be here now. Be in the present. Allow yourself to draw all of your resources, your inner resources, your physical resources, your human resources, your network, whatever those resources are that make up your universe. When you draw all of them, then with the alignment of spirit and intention, and the force field of love and support that you have in your life, you soldier on. Someone wrote in the chat one thing that, yes, unbearable, losing a child to cancer, losing a child at all, unbearable. There's a woman who's like family to me. We spend the summers together, and a cousin of hers, same age as my daughter, 18, got in a car accident right before going to college and lost her life. How do her parents go on? How do her loved ones go on? The one who lost a child to cancer. How do you put one foot in front of the other when that kind of change is a change you never want to experience? The loss. And somehow, the resiliency of the human being and the human spirit makes it possible for us to walk through those darkest moments one step at a time and get to the next landing place. In my way of understanding the world, faith is so important there. When your heart is broken, it feels like when it feels like you cannot go on, drawing upon faith and your connection to the divine can be the only thing that draws you out of that depth of darkness. And the thing is, that is there. That connection to the divine is there. You may have forgotten. That's possible. In the darkest moments, we often forget. But when you remember, when that light goes off and you go, wow, I'm not alone, because I can reignite my connection to the divine and to those who are surrounding me with love, even in my most tender moment. Even then, I'm not alone. Then it's easier to take the next step, whatever that step might be, in order to move forward, to not stay stuck. As much pain as you might be in, to not stay stuck. Now, we just addressed the pain of the deepest loss, the loss of a child. And then also, there are other kinds of loss. And I want to acknowledge them because everybody who's gathered here with us today, you may be going through something that you might think, well, this doesn't even matter what I'm going through because somebody's going through the loss of a child. Whatever your stress is valid. Whatever it is. Do not compare yourself to other people. What I want you to do in the safe space of this moment is to look at what is going on with you. What is troubling your heart and your spirit? What is the stress that you are feeling within your body and in your life? What is it? If you can't identify it, then you really can't do anything about it. A lot of times we do that finger pointing and it's somebody else's fault, whatever's going on. We do the finger pointing, and then what I want us to do, two things. I'd say this all the time. Wrestle that finger around and point it to yourself and ask yourself, what is my role in this? How did I get in this situation in the first place? What did I do to get here? And what can I do to move past this? Because when you do that, you're able to face it. The other thing, which requires introspection, is asking yourself, what is the real issue? Because a lot of times what happens is we feel that we are mad about something, we are frustrated, this emotion swirling around something. And then, if you look deeper, you may find that what is actually going on is something else. That there's something below the surface. The source of the stress may not be your boss, your partner, your child, your home, your family, your whatever. It may not be what it looks like it is on the surface. If you look deeper, what is it? I will give you an example. I spoke to a woman who was really, really frustrated with her job. She was not doing what she felt she was good at. She wasn't making enough money, and she didn't think her boss treated her respectfully. And we talked about this for a while. And after quite a bit of conversation, what became clear was she really was mad at herself for not continuing her education when she was a younger woman, because she believed that had she uh, acquired more skills and whatever degree was needed for a job that she really wanted to have, that her life may have been elevated. And she felt stuck in a job that had a pay ceiling that was lower than what she felt she deserved, and therefore there was a lot of frustration. And so as we were talking about it, I said, well, why don't you go back to school? It's not too late. Why don't you go back to school, get whatever the degree is that you feel you need in order to bump up your opportunities and move forward. And she's like, oh, I can't go back to school. I'm old. And whatever age she was, it doesn't even matter, because I think we get educated up until the day we die, or at least we can. And after a bit, she thought about it, and she decided to enroll in advanced education classes, and she turned her life around. She was able to take the classes, gain the skills, and command a higher salary. But it took her looking at the stress in her life and asking herself what her role was in it and what she could do to get out of the situation. It took time. It took a couple of years. She had to go to school and study and get the degree while she was working at a job that she didn't really want. But she did all of those things, and the outcome was something she wanted, that she envisioned, and that she worked to achieve. Now, I see some things in the chat. I'm going to read a couple of things that I see here because I think it's worth sharing. Glenda writes, if I agree, if they're nasty and rude, move on. I was a volunteer at the local thrift shop. One girl got jealous because I was assigned a different room and had first selections, and told the other lady I was stealing and didn't pay. Here we go. Even said she had me on camera. The next day she was shocked. I came back and donated my old things, and she said she asked the other lady not to come back. We worked fine again, but my family said don't go back. A few months later, she was begging me to come back. Isn't it funny? Funny how if you live in integrity, you do what you feel you're supposed to be doing, then the truth comes out. It may not come out immediately, but if you stand by your convictions and what you believe to be the way you're supposed to live, even when other people make accusations, treat you unkindly, if you stay in your space of integrity, your space of honor, your space of honesty, what can often happen is that you can ride the storm and the truth will show its face. As they say, the truth will set you free. The truth really can set you free because it comes to light eventually. And so this notion of dealing with your stress, John Newton told us, just deal with the stress you have today. Don't pile on what you have from yesterday or anticipate what you have tomorrow. Just deal with what you have today. But deal with it. Don't pretend it isn't there. Deal with it. You go deep. Go deep and try to figure out how you can unpack what's going on within you so that you can relieve the burden, that you can get that, the weight off of your shoulders or wherever in your body you carry stress. I want to invite every one of you to contemplate that deeply. Today, what is creating stress in your life and what can you do about it? And if more than one thing is creating stress, pick one of those and decide that you're going to address that one thing. Because when you address that one thing, you create space for healing. And that is powerful and is something you can do for yourself. but you just deal with what is before you now. And maybe just one thing that is before you now. Pay attention to it, figure out something that you can do to make that stress a little bit lighter. And often it's just your attitude about the stress in the first place. But what can you do to help relieve stress in your life? It starts with awareness and commitment. And you know you can do that. So I'm hoping that you will. And I want to invite each and every one of you to join me and Dr. Janet Taylor tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. Um, it's going to be on my HarrietteColeMedia Facebook page and also on YouTube, where we're going to explore what it means to step into change. We're sticking with our transitions theme that we had last month, and this time, taking that step into change. What does it look like? And how does the brain work to help us to be able to take the steps that we need to take? Dr. Janet Taylor is an amazing medical doctor, psychiatrist, thinker. She's worked with so many people in dealing with trauma and just mental health challenges. And she'll be with us tomorrow. And if I saw somebody said that they have somewhere to be at that time, it'll air live tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, but it won't go away. It'll still be there. So you can watch it and you can share it with your friends. I thank you so much for being with me today. I hope that you are rallying up that courage and fortitude to face the change in your life, to face the stress in your life, and to figure out how to relieve that stress a little bit, because you can do it. Thank you for spending this time with me. Have a great day and make it count. Namaste.